Welcome, listeners and viewers far and wide, from the dry heat of Mesa to the wet, wet heat of Manhattan. I am Eirik Gislason, Associate Broker and Team Leader of the Excelsior team at Brown Harris Stevens, Master Certified Negotiation Expert and Instructor, the founder of Archway Partners Coaching, and your host of Shear Negotiation Mastery, a podcast, as you know, bound and determined to reclaim and restore the good name of negotiation and unlock the door to value creation, win-win solutions, and the true power of collaboration and integrative negotiation. So today we are going to have a little bit of an unconventional show, a little bit different from our typical show. We are going to have a nice in-depth conversation about the FAIR Act, the Fairness in Apartment Rental Expenses Act that just went into effect on June 11th of this year and has caused quite a stir to this point, but we're going to get into it from a different perspective. We're going to talk about it from the negotiation perspective and have a conversation that hopefully will be fruitful to you, whether you are a renter in this industry or in this market, or whether you are an agent in this industry, because I think that that's an important conversation to have. But before we get into that, I want to welcome back my very good friend, Jay Billiet, and my part-time co-host. It's been 5 episodes since Jay has been here. There have been many cookie salads eaten in the meantime.
Yes.
And so welcome back, Jay. I'm glad to have you back.
Thank you for having me
podcast.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been a while since
Since
the cookie salad went viral.
Yeah.
Went viral in my family.
Yeah, the
anyway,
ambrosia, the cookie salad.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people doing memes or they're fighting.
It was a lot. I will tell you what, I have had a project on the cover of a magazine, but my family has never been more proud than when they saw the cookie salad debate on the podcast.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll have a cookie salad on the cover of one of an interior design magazine. That would just be the culmination.
That would be something. It could happen. It could happen. But no, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've been here.
Yeah.
A lot of things have happened.
Yep.
Well, Father's Day happened for you.
Father's Day happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
How was that?
Amazing. Mm-hmm. I have a 9 and a 12-year-old, as you know.
Yeah.
And girls, and they are still very, very much into Father's Day. And my wife is amazing and curates the whole Father's Day experience. So I still get breakfast in bed. Every single food you can imagine that can be cooked up in the kitchen is cooked up and put on the bed. It's quite an experience. But my older daughter, Cece, is now into Canva. Well, she has been, both of them are into Canva, and they're amazing at it. And this idea that there's this approachable design platform that they can learn on, and it's so incredibly intuitive. So you'll appreciate this, because Cece gave me a gift that has become kind of her standard gift with all of her friends. She takes, she's in a musical, she's in a musical theater, as we all are, right? And so she'll take a couple of musicals and mash them together and then design a poster to fit that mashed up musical. Like she's done Zamilton, Xanadu, and Hamilton. And then
I would see that. That sounds
and then she'll
great.
have like little quotes on the side, like, you know, like it was like Xanadu and Hamilton, the musical everybody wanted to see, said no one ever, right? And then she'll do like, she did Rent a Gypsy for one of her friends, so Rent and Gypsy together. Mm-hmm. She did Nannies, which is Newsies. Well, you tell me, what is Nannies?
I don't know.
Newsies and Annie together. And so for Father's Day, because my wife and I met, and Jay was a part of this too, doing Annie Get Your Gun at Mill Mountain Theater. And then the next show that we did together, which you were also a part of, was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So she made me a poster that was Annie Get Your Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and mashed up those two. And it was this cool poster that she designed. And then my younger daughter, she and I drive her to school every morning, so we listen to Taylor Swift quite frequently, and so I tell her that I try to rival her as this number one Swiftie. Oh, so she got me a magnet, a Swiftie magnet. So I felt like I was part of the Swiftie club.
Yeah, you're probably losing that battle.
Yes. Secretly, I am losing that battle. In public or with my daughter, I'm trying to win that battle.
Good for you. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Good family, and the kids are they love that stuff. So
I slept in that day. I think I went to the gym.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it was I had a good
Thanks
day.
for rubbing it in. Yeah, great. Yeah, it wasn't relaxing, so to speak, but it was
Well,
fun. It was great. Yeah.
It's not necessarily supposed to be relaxing.
Yeah, that's right. At this point, it's you just take all of the fun, take it in. So
Yeah.
that's what I do. Yeah,
That's what
good.
it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Should we get into it?
yeah, let's get into it.
I'm gonna put
As
my
you
glasses
probably
on.
noticed,
I know
I have to
put yours on.
I will probably
Let's
have to
do
put mine
this.
on as
This
well.
I'm going to look smarter because I need
Yeah.
to be legit for this.
It's a little different this time because I have cards,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm, when we discussed this topic, the thing that was most interesting to me, what a lot of people don't know is, I am an interior designer by trade. I've been doing it for a number of years, but I did have a brief stint in real estate, and
Yeah.
during that time, I worked with you when I became a real estate agent, and I was an agent for maybe a year.
Yeah, probably
Maybe
about
a little
year.
more, maybe a little less. I can't remember.
And then your
exactly.
design life took off, and you said,
Yeah, well, the economy had tanked, and so the design industry took a huge dip, and so I went into
right.
real estate, and then as things picked back up, I went back into design. And the truth is, even when I was an agent, I worked best with clients that utilized my design skills.
I remember
Those are the
that,
people
yeah.
that I excelled with. And I loved it. I had a lot of fun with them, which was nice because I sort of stayed in the industry in a way, or at least I was able to constantly remind myself of what I love doing and why I love doing it. And I got to go in and out of people's apartments all the time, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean that time in our careers, I think it's that there's so much fun in being a rental agent
Mm-hmm.
and going into all these beautiful luxury buildings, these penthouse apartments, massive, gorgeous, tens of thousands a month apartments, and then the next apartment or the next client you meet, you're in a $1,500 studio on the Upper West Side.
If even you're in a
basement,
$900 basement to studio,
Right, exactly.
where there
It's
is
so
no
fun.
bathroom.
And
Yeah,
I remember
it was always an adventure.
Yeah, and I remember specifically that I loved about you, and you taught. I was a manager by the time.
Yeah,
started,
you were
right?
a manager by that time.
So I remember one of the things that I loved about what you did was you loved to take floor plans, and you would walk the client through a floor plan, put furniture. Where are you going to set this up? It was such an added value for every client. So it was
a lot of fun. I remember once I was working with a young gentleman, and he was fantastic, very nice. He told me what I wanted, and I took him to the perfect apartment. And I said, "This is your apartment." And he said, "I don't think so." And I said, "This is it." I said, "This is your apartment." And he said, "I just don't see it." And I said, "Give me until 5 o'clock." And I went back to my desk. I drafted a floor plan. I put everything that he said he wanted into the floor plan, and I sent it to him. And I said, "Is this your apartment?" And he said, "This is my apartment." He just didn't have the vision, but I loved being able to have that vision for him, and I loved having that vision for the client. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It was a lot of fun to do. So we used to work together, or I was a real estate agent. You were a manager at the time. But when we even broached the idea of having this conversation as a podcast, I loved it because I have a ton of questions. I was thinking of this in the sense that because the FAIR Act has changed a lot of things, I don't think it's changed everything that a lot of people think it has. I think there's a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious about this, to hear not only how the industry has changed since I was in it, but also what the FAIR Act has done to change it. And one of the things that we talked about was when I went into real estate, that was when I learned there truly is no such thing as a no-fee apartment.
right.
Right? And an agent is always getting paid.
Right.
A no-fee apartment means the renter is not paying that agent a fee.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. And I think a lot of people, so many young people moving to New York don't know. They just know to expect a circus when they're looking for an apartment.
Yeah.
But there is no such thing as a no-fee apartment because an agent is getting paid by someone.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the biggest misconception now, I think, with the FAIR Act, and I've actually encountered this with friends who have recently been active in the rental market, is the FAIR Act comes out, and I told you, I Googled it. I said, I want to see what AI says about this. So I Googled the FAIR Act, and when you get to the part that talks about, the apartment expenses, the first thing it says is landlords, agents will no longer be able to charge renters a fee. Now, unless I know to read every single word of that, but if you're not well versed in the rental market, you don't know that landlord's agent is different than just saying agent.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people out there that thought come June 15th or June 11th, whatever the date was, they thought no more broker's fees.
Yes.
So how is that misconception changing what's happening now? You know, how are you explaining that to people?
Yeah. Well, that you're absolutely right. There was, even before the Fair Act, I think a lot of misconception or misperception or a misunderstanding of who's getting paid and how. And the fact is that we as an industry have to take some ownership of that and have some responsibility in that. And as we go on today, I want to talk about how agents should be having this conversation and how many agents in this business, including you and me in our past lives as rental agents, have been having this conversation successfully for years. The question is, what kind of an agent are you working with? I mean, from a scruples standpoint, from an honesty and ethics standpoint, from an education standpoint, who are you working with and how are they educating you in the process? Because this is a conversation that has been happening for years, but agents have had a misunderstanding of how this works, let alone the renter public, the renting public. So, before I talk about how we're having that conversation or how we're navigating that from a negotiation standpoint, because that's really where I want this conversation to land.
Right.
Is we've got renters out there who watch this podcast. We've got people who know renters who watch this podcast, and we've got a lot of agents who watch this podcast. And what I would love to do, and what with your help, is provide value for both of those sides of the transaction. I want agents out there who are unfamiliar with the changes or who don't know how to navigate these changes to have some better understanding and more arrows in their quiver, so to speak, to be able to navigate this process with renters from a value proposition standpoint. And then I would love renters to understand what choices they have, to understand what the value of having representation is, and understand how to navigate that choice for themselves, whether they ultimately end up doing it on their own or with an agent, because that again is their value proposition. That's how they experience the value proposition provided to them from an agent, and they process it and they determine what's best for them on a cost-benefit analysis. It's how we all make decisions. So I hope that the conversation will end up being fruitful for both sides of the conversation. I will say one of the things that I think is important for the audience to understand is how I believe I have credibility in this conversation. Because if you're a renter out there, a lot of the assumptions are, or the perception is that the agent community is just out to manipulate you and to cheat you and to lie to you and get you to pay a fee no matter what at any expense or at any cost. And that's not true. That's absolutely not true. So from a credibility standpoint for renters, I think it's important that I give some background. And for agents who are out there, I think it's important for them to understand where I come from as well. So, I don't know, maybe on the other side of a break, I'll go back into that conversation.
Okay, absolutely.
All right, so
absolutely.
we'll take a break. I'll announce the break. We're going to take a break. We'll come right back, and then I'll finish that credibility piece.
Okay.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country, and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, I was in the middle of a very, very interesting monologue about credibility. So I'm just going to continue on, if you don't mind.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But I do think it's important, and as someone who is going to be speaking on this subject, for everybody to have some sense of trust in my word, in my experience, and in my expertise on this subject. And I've been in this business for 20 years. I've been in this business in many different facets, as a rental agent to begin with, as a sales agent, as a manager, as a rental manager, a director of sales, a director of development, training agents on rentals and sales, and then ultimately going back into brokerage and rebuilding my brokerage business. But going back to the beginning of my career in the real estate industry, when I started with a firm that strictly at the time did rentals. And not only did we do rentals, we represented renters, tenants. We didn't have exclusives. And this is back in the day of Craigslist and the New York Times, and doing those types of ads in order to get clients, to produce leads. There were no rent portals. There was no Rent Hop or Naked Apartments or Street Easy, any of that stuff, right? And so we were advertising, and I'm sure we'll get into this into the conversation, because this is one of the problems, I think, with where we've gotten in our industry. But the majority of the listings were what we called open listings. Landlords would give out the open listings or promote the open listings to rental agents. Rental agents would go out and then promote those listings to the general public to try to get leads. They would get those leads, and then they would try to convert them, whether it was with that specific apartment or some other apartment. And so we were doing this on Craigslist and New York Times, as I mentioned, and other portals like that. Obviously, as the renter public probably understands, and so does the agent public that's out there, there was a lot of bad behavior that went along with that. Multiple apartments being rented, or multiple advertisements for one specific apartment at all different prices with all different photos, all of that stuff. But the thing that was specific about my firm and why I believe that there's credibility here is that I happen to work for a firm that really did put the renter's interests first. And that was not only with the fee structure that we had for the way that we worked with renters, but how we educated renters, how we did what we called at that time the intro rental conversation, and how we got on the phone with every single renter and we took them through the 4 steps of the sale that I always promote. Educate, qualify, build rapport, and close. It was all about educating the client on what they could expect, qualifying them so they knew how to build a strategy around getting what they could get or what they wanted. And so that background that I had in working with renters in a purely renter-focused, renter interest-based model helped me build a career. Within a couple of years of me starting in the career, our company completely turned off every lead source that we had. We were a growing company, but all of our business was generated from personal referral, repeat client, corporate referral, Yelp. We had a huge Yelp presence, and school referral business. All of these people were coming to us. Why? Because we were doing business the right way. We were representing tenants in a way that served their interest. And so I'm all about doing that, and I think that the FAIR Act actually accomplishes a lot of what we were doing 20 years ago when I started in real estate. And so I'm proud to see how that model has come forward, but as we'll talk about, it's got some very, very deep negative unintended consequences that come along with it.
Right. So this is a good place to start, right? Because as I mentioned, when I started as an agent, there was there was 3 kinds of apartments. There was a no-fee apartment, there was a 1-month fee apartment, and then there was what was called a co-broke, which was a 12% or 15% fee on an apartment. You trained me. So everything that you just said is what I did.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I was trained. And the first thing I would do when I got a client on the phone is I would explain that to them. I would say, these are the types of apartments that exist. These are the types of apartments we will see. I will let you know before we walk into every apartment what type of apartment this is. This apartment costs this much and there's a 1-month fee.
Yeah.
This apartment costs this much and there is no fee. Or this apartment costs this much and there's a 12% fee, but just so you know, I only get half of that. I get less than I would if you got another apartment. So I'm only showing you this because I think it's the right apartment for you.
Yeah.
So now with the FAIR Act, how does that description, if I were to start again today, how does that description change? How do I explain to the client, well, if these are all, I believe co-brokes no longer exist.
That's right.
So what is that description to the client, and how do I tell them who pays? Because the FAIR Act has changed the pay structure.
Yeah. So you're right. This conversation about fees is going to change. And I think that there are going to be some agents out there who are maybe not happy with how I'm going to answer that question, because I do think that it changes the way we have conversations with our clients about fees moving forward. But I will say one clarification. Co-brokes will exist. Co-brokes exist. The idea of 2 brokers cooperating with each other absolutely exists. There's, having one agent representing the tenant, one agent representing the landlord. That is absolutely going to exist. What is not going to exist, and I think this is a great thing, is that client, that renter, is going to no longer be responsible for paying both their agent and the landlord's agent.
Got it.
The FAIR Act says whoever hires the agent pays the agent. So if a landlord engages an agent to rent their apartment, they are responsible for paying that agent. So this idea of a 15% co-broke or a 12% co-broke, as you mentioned, where the renter pays 6% and 6% or 7.5% and 7.5% and covers everybody's fees. Thank God that's gone. That's out the window. And so a renter can expect that if they're going to pay anybody, it's going to be the person that they hire. And that's why I believe that the structure of fees is going to change for the benefit of the client. When you mentioned how we did it at our firm. You mentioned our standard, our collect your own fee. Our fee was 1 month, and so what that did, and I'm just going to lay it out because I think this lends to the client-centric approach that we had. Because as you mentioned, there were 3 different fees, and we would explain to the client how it worked so that they understood that we were not incentivized in one direction or another to show them one apartment over another, to push one apartment over another. And that's one of the huge misperceptions a client had is, how are you getting paid, and how do I know that you're not pushing me or influencing me to serve your interest rather than my own? Rather than mine as a renter. And so when we had that conversation, we would sit down and we would say, if we're collecting from a landlord, if they're paying us what we call an OP, that's generally paid on a 1-month basis, called a 1-month OP. If it's our fee that we collect on a collect your own fee, our company fee, we also make that 1 month. So there's no incentive,
no benefit
for me to show you something where I'm getting paid by the landlord or getting paid by you. And the third fee that they might encounter, and as we would say in our script, I don't want you to pay a 15% co-broke. The last thing I would want is for you to have to come out of pocket 15%, which is almost 2 months' rent. Now, side note, a lot of renters, you would say 15%, they didn't know that was 15% of the annual rent.
Exactly.
They thought, 15% of $3,000, okay, what is that? That's $450. I think I could afford that, right? They didn't even understand that when we said 15% that it was of the annual rent. So being able to explain that to them and then compare that to the other 2 fees brought into context and into clarity to that client exactly what they were looking at. And then as you remember, we would say, if it's a 15% co-broke, it might be the right apartment. I don't want you to not see it because maybe all things considered, net, it's the right apartment for you. So we will be upfront. We'll tell you in advance exactly what the fee structure is, but you will know that if it is a 15% co-broke, I'm actually getting paid 7.5%, which is 0.8% less than I would get paid if it was a 1 month fee or an OP from the landlord or the developer, because that's 8.3% of the annual rent is 1 month. So I actually get paid less on a co-broke, but that's not enough. 0.8% is not enough for me to sway you in one direction or another, right? That fee structure, boom, 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 7.5, 8.3, 8.3. It made sense for the client. It was honest to the client. It was fair to the client. And most importantly, in my opinion, it showed the client that we were never going to make a decision that served our interests over theirs because we weren't incentivized to do it. Whereas other fee structures where they were just collecting as their company fee, the highest possible fee, the most they could possibly charge, whatever that was, because co-brokes existed, this split half and half, and because OPs existed on a 1 month basis, it absolutely incentivized the agent to work against their client's interests. Unless there are plenty of honest agents out there who would never do that to their client. I fully believe that even though the fee structure is different, they would never dissuade their client from doing the thing that was in their interest. I totally believe that. But it's still, if you want to be fair to the client, if you want to be client-focused, client-centric, and do what's right by the client, the fee structure plays into that.
Okay. That brings up a few questions that I want to ask you. Excuse me, but we do have to take a break, so we'll be right back.
Ultimate Diamond is New York City's most established family-owned jeweler. With over 65 years of experience, Ultimate is renowned for its exceptional, custom-crafted diamond jewelry, its bespoke engagement ring designs, and its ability to source rare, distinguished timepieces. Ultimate has built a legacy of timeless craftsmanship and discretion, making it a trusted name among those who value refined luxury. Learn more at ultimatediamond.com.
When we first started Excel Real Property Management 11 years ago, we did so with the intention of protecting the investment community. Here at Excel Real Property Management, we focus specifically on serving the needs of individual apartments, townhouse, and small multifamily building owners both in Manhattan and select neighborhoods of Brooklyn. Our services encompass everything: rent collection, expense payment, handling maintenance and repair, turnover between tenants, insurance needs. Literally anything that an investor would typically handle him or herself, we take care of for them. Whether you hold one individual apartment or a rental building that houses 20 units, Excel is here to help with all of your specific needs.
Welcome back. Eirik was just talking about the conversation that you have with clients before taking them out. Basically saying that full disclosure is the answer, right? That's the way you were trained. That's the way I was trained. My question for you is, now that landlords now that renter is no longer going to be paying, say, both halves, they're not going to be paying the rental agent and they're not going to be paying the leasing agent. If that agent is hired by the landlord has to pay that agent. Yeah. What is the incentive for then that landlord to hire someone? Because for a long time, they've been quote unquote hiring someone that's been doing sort of their half of the work. Because let's be honest, regardless of who hires the agent, and I've been an agent and I know it's not easy, the agent is working for both entities. The agent is managing the renter's expectations. The agent is gathering all that information, making sure they're qualified. Excuse me, but then that agent is also working for the landlord because they can't put unqualified people in their building. They don't want to jeopardize that reputation in either. Yeah. So they're running credit checks. They're making sure that process is quick, and it's very quick, and they're making sure it's very smooth for the landlord. So the landlord has been getting these services, their half of the deal, for, I don't want to say free, but they've been getting it they've been able to hire someone without paying them for a long time. So now what is their incentive to hire someone, and how do they go about doing that?
Well, I think you just laid out part of why they would hire someone, and this is where I think that I wrote a blog post recently called "From Access to Advocacy," and I think that's where we're going here. And again, if you were working with an agent who was a true advocate for renters or landlords, depending on which side of the transaction they're on, you were already getting that advocacy. But there was this fallacy, or this I guess this perception that what an agent really did was give access, right? And a landlord, in many cases, thought I shouldn't have to, just because I hand keys over to an agent doesn't necessarily mean that I should have to pay them a whole bunch of money. Let somebody else pay them a whole bunch of money, right? They were believing that the key transfer to the agent who was going to open the door was really all that agent was doing, and they weren't really they weren't either understanding that there was a whole lot more that agent did in order to make that successful, that rental successful, or they weren't hiring the right agent. Right. Because the agent that they hired actually was just opening doors and collecting a fee. And sometimes that agent would not open the doors to some people and open the doors to others, whether they had a renter's agent or not, because it made a difference on how much they would actually collect in their fee at the end of the day, which is not at all advocacy for the landlord. If the landlord hired them, they have every responsibility to make sure that they get that apartment rented for the highest possible price in the shortest amount of time with a qualified renter, right? If that's the job of a landlord's agent, there is so much benefit to hiring a good agent. There is so much value to what a landlord's agent does for the landlord. So if you're a landlord out there, there's 100% a reason why you would say, oh shoot, now the law says if I hire someone, I have to pay them. Pay them. Negotiate with them, find a way to work a solution with them, but to have a good advocate on your side, to have a good agent on your side, to represent the property, to negotiate on your behalf, to get the best possible renter in that building, to show it as many times as is humanly possible in order to create competition, whatever all of those responsibilities are that the landlord's agent has, respect those responsibilities, understand the benefits that come with that, and then hire the best agent that you can in order to represent you. So that's one part of it, is that landlords, I think, deserve to reevaluate who they're hiring and hire a qualified agent now that they're going to pay them. But they should at least entertain whether it's going to end up being a net gain for them. The other thing that we haven't talked about yet is one of the unintended consequences of rising rent prices. So another reason why a landlord might decide, okay, I'm going to do this, is because in many, many markets in New York City, and many sub-markets in New York City, the vacancy rate is so low. It's the reason that they could pass the fee on to the tenants, right? Right. Tenants would pay the fee all up front. And so now they're presumably, if they are in a market that will allow it, and many of these sub-markets will, they're going to raise rents in order to compensate for that fee. That is happening. And unfortunately, that's an unintended consequence of this bill. And the way I like to explain it, because there are some that say, yes, that's true, but hey, look, at least the renter can split that fee into 12 monthly payments, as opposed to paying it all up front, because that's a huge lump sum of money. I get it. I totally understand it. But if that renter stays in that apartment for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, if the rent went up $150 a month to compensate the landlord's agent for that broker's fee, well, I'm sorry, renter, you're paying that $150 a month on year 1, on year 2, on year 3. As long as you stay there, you are continuing to pay that fee over and over and over again, and all of your increases are now based on the higher rent. So that's one of the unintended consequences.
So let me ask you this. In that case, is a landlord able to say, or will a landlord be able to say, this is the apartment, this is the rent. If you pay this fee, this is the rent. If you don't pay the fee, the rent will be this much per month. Like, is there going to be an option for them to pass it on honestly and say, look, I have to pay this agent.
Well, I mean, I don't think
You can give me $1,700 now, or I'll just increase the rent and you'll just pay it over and over and over for as long as you're here.
Well, they won't have that choice because if they hire an agent, they are engaging into a contract where they are going to pay their agent. So it's not like if a direct client comes to them that they won't be responsible for that broker's fee. They're already contracted, or they have an agreement with that listing agent to pay them a fee. So that fee is going to be paid whether the renter comes with a broker or comes with an agent or not. Is that maybe?
No, that makes sense. And so my next question is, who is obligated, legally or morally, to inform the renter of who is getting paid and how? Because what's going, one thing about a co-broke is you could say to a client, the fee is 15%. I get half, they get half, everybody's paid, and we all go home. But now you're saying to the renter, the landlord is going to pay their agent.
Yeah.
Or the landlord is going to pay me. Whose job is it to disclose? I mean, and obviously, I would say it was my obligation to say the landlord is paying me, you don't have to. But who's going to stop an agent from not disclosing that information? Or is it the landlord's responsibility to say, this is my agent, you do not pay him a fee?
Yes, but that's a great question. There is a fee disclosure that comes along with. I mean, this is part of this is all the bill has been focused on brokers' fees, right? But the bill is actually rental expenses, and so part of it's the fairness. What is it?
Apartment
rental expenses, right? So fairness and apartment rental expenses. So the bill is talking about what are the expenses associated with renting each specific apartment, and that's another great aspect of this bill, is that to your point. Who's got to disclose this? Well, the landlord has to disclose all of the fees that are associated with renting this apartment, including the deposit, the security deposit, the first month's rent, any application fees, move in or move out fees. Any fee that's associated with renting that apartment needs to be disclosed to the renter. Isn't that a great thing? Finally, that's a great thing. Finally, that the renter upfront knows what they're getting themselves into.
Right.
I mean, until 2019, you remember back when you were an agent. I mean, there were people that were charging a $200 application fee, and they were charging a $30 application fee, and people would just be stuffing money in their pockets with these inflated application fee costs. Right? They did away with that and said everybody needs to charge a $20 application fee. Thank goodness they did that. And in this case, they're furthering that and making sure that everybody is aware of what the rental expenses are, including the broker's fee. So the landlord is responsible for informing any incoming renter what the expenses are that they can expect, and then a tenant's agent, a renter's agent, also then has to inform that renter of what fees they can expect, including paying their broker's fee. So if you take the opposite thing, I just made the case on why a landlord absolutely should consider hiring an agent because of all of the things that a skilled agent does for a landlord. The same thing is true on the renter side. I mean, the initial misperception of this bill was brokers' fees are gone.
Right, exactly.
Right? Renters no longer have to pay a broker's fee. You're right, you don't have to. You never had to. You never had to. You could do this search. We used to say this to clients all the time. If you wanted to walk up and down every block, if you had access to every website, if you had all the time in the world to do this and you knew how to prepare yourself for the process, great, you don't need an agent. But the vast majority of clients in this market in New York City have no idea how to prepare themselves for the competition that they're going to face. For every apartment, there's 4 or 5 renters looking for that same apartment. There's such a dearth of inventory. For a good apartment, that number goes way up, 7 to 10 renters. So how do you put your application at the top of the pile? Do you know whether you should have a guarantor or not? How flexible is your move-in date, and why does it matter to you? right? When you do find the apartment that you like, are you ready to prepare? Are you prepared to put that paperwork in the way that the landlord's agent wants you to, or the landlord wants you to, so that you're not at the bottom of the pile because your paperwork is like
No
3
one wants to thumb
PDFs
through 100
Exactly.
pages of bank statements.
Yeah, you send them a zip file of
Right.
14 different years of tax returns. It's like they just asked for the first 2 pages of your 2024 federal 1040, and now they got to look through, X82542.jpg to figure out what you just sent them. And a lot of renters have no idea. So is there a value in a renter who has limited time, who has opportunity costs of their time, who is looking for something very specific or not, or who has just no idea how to navigate the process, or who needs someone to talk to their father, their mother, their aunt, their uncle, their best friend, guarantor?
That's a big one.
They don't know how to prepare them. Guarantor says, I don't want to provide any paperwork whatsoever, right? Yeah. A good skilled agent knows how to navigate that conversation with a guarantor to give them the comfort that their information is going to be safe and secure, who's going to be handling this information, what does the landlord need, what doesn't the landlord need. There's so much value a landlord's or a renter's agent can provide in that scenario, but then the renter's agent has to say, you need to hire me. So now it's no longer this idea that we just run around with people and show them a bunch of apartments with a fee agreement. We now have to explain to them that if you want me to work as your renter's agent, we have to have a formalized relationship where you understand that it is likely, just like it always was, it is likely that you are going to pay me a fee. This is what I charge. And in the event that the landlord is offering an OP, because OPs still exist, and in fact, the OP structure is getting even more dynamic because those landlords who have decided not to hire a landlord's agent, those landlords now have made the decision that they are going to disseminate their listings to the brokerage community and maybe directly to clients as well. It'll be a question of how far is their reach? That's one of the things that agents have is we pay for all of these different portals and memberships to different platforms so that we can give every listing the widest reach. Does the landlord have that ability? Well, if those who don't hire an agent, they're going to get it out to whoever they can, and they may offer an OP to a renter's agent and say, look, you can pass the savings on to your renter. You have to have an agreement with them, but at the end of the day, you walk in the door, and instead of them paying a landlord's agent, they're going to pay the renter's agent an OP.
Right.
So those things still will exist.
Well, and to your point, I tell my friends all the time, because I've lived here a long time, they're moving here or they're moving for the first time and they say, do I need an agent? And I say, yes. And then that's not the answer they want. And they say, right. And they say, do I have to have an agent? And I said, no, but you need to have one because you need someone who's going to get all the correct information, put it in a presentable manner so that, this is New York. One thing that's not changing with the FAIR Act is that this is still the rental market in New York. Yeah. It's a circus. It moves very, very quickly, and therefore the agents have to move very, very quickly. And if you see something you like, you have to move very, very quickly. Yeah. Not even the best of my friends are organized enough to do that. I say, hire someone. You're going to pay them a 1-month fee, but they're going to have all the information they need. It's going to be in a packet so that when you walk into the apartment you want, they say, great. And they can probably do it from their phone now. They probably do that application. They submit your packet from the apartment while you're standing in it. Yeah, I think that will never change. And it also sounds like from the renter standpoint, the FAIR Act isn't really changing what their experience will be, other than the agent is going to have a more authentic relationship with them. I had a friend once who said, I'm going to see an apartment on Saturday. And I said, that's great. And he said, there's a 1-month fee. And I said, how many apartments is he going to show you? Because to me, I thought, well, if you're giving him a fee, he's obviously going to put in some legwork. And he goes, just one. And I said, just one. And he goes, and then I'm seeing one on Sunday. I said, when do you have to move? You're going to see, you're going to contact a different broker 2 different brokers every week to see 2 different apartments. Yeah. That's going to take you forever. Which leads me to my next question is, how is the FAIR Act going to alleviate that sort of misconception? That misconception of, the agent is going to have to be very clear. very direct. Is that going to eliminate some of the people who come to New York and they reach out to 3 different agents? And this happened to me when I was an agent. I worked with it happened more than once where I say, what apartments have you seen? And they say, we haven't seen anything. And it turns out they've been out for 2 days with other agents.
Yeah.
Is this conversation about the Fair Act going to eliminate some of that so that not only is the renter more comfortable with their agent, but the agent can actually be more comfortable with the fact that I might put in 2 full days of showing apartments to this potential renter and come out with a fee in the end?
The answer is I hope so. I hope it changes that dynamic for everybody's benefit. For everybody's benefit. And this goes to how I look at this from a negotiation standpoint from the renter side of things and for the agent side of things. Because you just mentioned, I mean, to some degree, and a lot of people don't know this, I think, or don't appreciate this, that as a rental agent, you take on a tremendous amount of risk. Mm-hmm. You work your tail off 7 days a week, especially for 4 or 5, 6 months of the year, where it's nonstop. And you are trying to help as many people as you can help without any sort of protection whatsoever as to whether you are going to get paid or
right.
that tenant is going to work with you or not, right? That is a very, very difficult lifestyle, difficult job, difficult situation. I mean, it's brutal. It's brutal. And if you don't know that, if you're not aware of that this is how rental agents work, there are a ton of honest, hardworking rental agents that work in this business who are out there advocating for and working with on behalf of, in a trusting relationship with, and all of these different clients who may or may not transact with them.
Right.
There are agents out there who are cheating and lying and manipulating clients, and that's what this Fair Act hopefully is meant to punish, was meant to do away with. Right. I'm not sure, the bad actors always find a way to act bad. The bad actors will always find a way to wrap their head around this law and find some way to manipulate people. But yes, there are bad actors in this industry. In every industry. But there are so many people who work really tirelessly to help renters. So from the agent side of things, yes, I hope that the need for, the requirement of having a formalized relationship with a renter will allow rental agents to increase their game when it comes to providing a positive value proposition to a renter to say, this is why you would engage me. This is why you would hire me. This is why you would work with me and me alone to help you find the right apartment. That is incumbent upon the agents to really hone their skill and to convey that value, just like in the new buyer representation agreement world that we're in for sales, right? This idea that a buyer has to hire their agent. Same thing. Buyers agents now, they couldn't just say, well, it's okay because you don't pay me. The seller pays me, so everything's fine. That mentality is gone. So now the buyers have to have a conversation, or buyers agents have to have a conversation and actually put forward a value proposition that makes sense for a buyer. Same thing is true now with renters, but it's also going to hopefully allow rental agents to have a more formalized relationship with their client so they don't have to run that risk of doing all of that work while their client is working with 15 different agents. Now, they could still be going directly to the landlord's agent. But going back to the value proposition, the thing that you mentioned when your friends say, should I work with an agent? You say, yes, you absolutely should. You know what the value is. Right. And in your mind, you're thinking of, the image that you're pulling forward is a good, honest, professional rental agent, right? Exactly. You're not thinking any agent. You're thinking, do they deserve to have someone who's competent, professional, who has an expertise in negotiation and navigating the process? And then the answer is an unequivocal yes, you deserve that and you should have that. The only question that then comes up when you're doing a value proposition as a renter is, you know what the benefit is, what's the cost? You evaluate the cost, and it's not just I say the big C and the little c. The big C is the fee. What is it going to financially cost you to work with a renter's agent? There's going to be an out-of-pocket expense likely that you're going to have to incur. Do you have the ability to pay that? If you're someone who's on a shoestring budget, maybe you don't. Maybe you have to navigate the process on your own, and that's fair. We both have been in that world where it's like, I don't have $1,500 to pay someone, right? And that's fair. You just have to evaluate it. But there's also the little c in that denominator. So benefit over cost benefit analysis. The big C is the fee you're going to pay. The little c is the other costs that are involved. What is the cost of not having good representation? What is the cost of having bad representation? So it's incumbent upon renters, agents to deliver a good value proposition to a renter. It's also incumbent upon the renter to evaluate the people that they're meeting and say, is this someone I trust? Is this someone I believe has my interests in mind? Or do I believe that there's going to be a little c cost to working with this person? Or if I don't work with Jay, if I pass on Jay and just go out into the world of looking on my own and putting my fate in the hands of a listing agent who does not have my interests in mind, they're working for the landlord, literally working for the landlord. So they're getting paid by the landlord, working for the landlord. So they don't have your interests in mind. What are the small c costs to that? And that's what it's all about, in my opinion. So if you're a renter, there's absolutely a world in which you would hire a renter's agent. It still exists. It's still a viable way to do things. And everybody deserves advocacy. Everybody deserves to have a representative on their side of the transaction. The real question is, what does it cost and can you afford it? Does it make sense to you? That's up to you to decide. For agents out there, you have to be able to deliver a clear, concise, confident value proposition to a renter that shows them that you are working in their interest. And as I said earlier, I think it's going to upset a lot of agents. I believe the days of these exorbitant fees are gone, because without a co-broke, split 7.5, or whatever that co-broke was split, without that existing, running around and charging these incredibly high fees is going to be a huge ask. I don't care if you're asking that of the landlord. Landlord's not going to pay you that. And a renter is going to laugh you out of the room, in my opinion, or they should, because there is a fair, there is a way to do this that is fair to the renter. And it does, and I will say this. There are agents who have been working in this business who deserve to charge the highest possible fee they can charge because they're incredibly good at what they do. I don't believe in capping fees. I don't believe that somebody shouldn't be told what they can earn. That's not what I mean here. That's not what I'm advocating for. Shoot, I think I have so much experience. If anybody's going to charge the highest possible fee to a renter, it would be me, frankly. But I also believe that there's a fairness to the renter when it comes to disclosing where you're getting paid and how much you're getting paid. And when those things start to become varied to a wide degree, the question is, are you pointing in that direction for your interest or theirs? That's where I think it gets muddy, and that's where I think that we're going to start to see something that is much more fair and transparent to the renter. But it is going to have huge unintended consequences, including increased cost and including reduced visibility on inventory. We didn't even get into that.
Yeah, reduced visibility, and also we're now putting a lot of. We're asking the landlords to put in a lot more effort. And we're talking about a lot of landlords let agents come and go through these apartments. And now we're asking them, hey, if we want you to hire somebody. If that's what you want, you have to hire someone, you have to pay someone. Now they have to put in more effort, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
and so I'm curious to see how that's going to pan out. Which way will that go? Is that going to end up with less landlords hiring agents to work with them solely on their behalf, or is it going to end up with more? And I don't think we'll know.
Hopefully it'll end up with
a year, right?
Yeah, we won't know. Hopefully it'll end up with at the very least landlords doing their due diligence to hire the person that is going to serve their interest in the best possible way, where they can actually see the value in paying that agent a fee. Hopefully it won't end with rents going up, inflating across the board.
Right.
Whether it's an agent or a landlord who hires an agent or not. I have a feeling that is going to be the consequence of this, unfortunately. And And hopefully it'll be a market that still lends some transparency, whether it should. I don't want this to end up being an access argument again. The fees should not be based on access. Fees should be based on advocacy. And if we can land somewhere where a renter hires an agent because they know that they're going to advocate for their interests and do right by them, and the landlord hires an agent because they know that they're going to have someone who's going to advocate for their interests. If that's where this lands, then that would be great.
That's a win.
But there's going to be a lot of bumps along the road.
There will be. I mean, I think there will be just these few bumps now as it rolls out, just because of misconceptions and misunderstandings. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that still think there's no more broker's fees. Yeah. So I'm very curious to see how it all plays out. Yeah, it's going to be hard for the renter's agent to engage a renter and explain to them why they would hire them and pay them a fee when that person believes that fees don't exist. Right. And so you're automatically, do you think that the person is nefarious or manipulative or trying to pull one over on you because they're asking you to pay them a fee if you hire them? Exactly. So it's gonna be agents have got to educate themselves and educate their clients and gain that trust and build that trust, and that's what negotiation is all about. It is all about making sure that you build that trust and rapport with the client so that they understand what you're telling them is in their interests, not yours. Right. That's it. I agree. All right, so let's you know what? I'm gonna wrap it up. Do you mind if I wrap it up? No, go ahead. This is great. This was I like being interviewed. This kind of. I still have so many more questions, but I know maybe we'll do a part another two. Time. Part two. We'll do a part two. Hopefully you as an audience found value in this. Please, if you did, send us a DM, message us on any platform you'd like, because we would love to hear from you. And if there is a part two, even if it expands to a larger conversation with more people, that would be amazing. Let us know your questions. Yeah, and send in your questions. Us know your experience, because we could have this same conversation in 6 months and it could be completely different. Maybe we'll bring in a renter who's had a good or a bad experience, and get their feedback on what they've experienced pre-Fair Act, post-Fair Act, which would be really interesting. Yeah. But in the meantime, that is the Shear line for today. As a reminder, you can support this show by following us, subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just go to getmorenetwork.com, and there you can check out all of the amazing shows on the More Network, including past episodes of the Shear line, including the first ever episode that included Jay Billiet. You can find me all over Instagram at archway.partners, as well as Eirik the Expert, and on YouTube and Facebook at Eirik the Expert. You can connect with the Excelsior team at BHS by going to bhsusa.com, and you can connect with my coaching company, Archway Partners Coaching, by visiting archwaypartnersinc.com, where you can find out more about our brand new Mighty Network community. This is an unbelievable community where we have weekly access, role plays, small group coaching, Q&As, and a ton of resources, modules, training, and scripts, all kinds of stuff inside the Mighty Network. So go to archwaypartnersinc.com and you can learn more about the Mighty Network community. And until next time, there is a key for every lock, but it's the right combination of grooves, cuts, and teeth that lift the pins and create the shear line. Until next time, keep turning curiosity into connection, mystery into mastery, and keep unlocking what's possible. We'll see you next time, everybody.